I've seen it happen countless times. You see a cheap gaming PC online, click add to cart, and a few weeks later you're staring at a box that barely runs the newest titles without dropping frames, while you're stuck scrolling through forums trying to figure out why it heats up like a toaster. The regret is real, and it's why I always pause before buying any pre-built rig. The question I keep asking myself is whether a higher-priced option actually saves you from that headache, or if it's just another expensive piece of metal with a fancy logo. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm going to walk through the KOTIN Prebuilt gaming PC to see if it really feels like a smarter buy. First off, the biggest hesitation people have with pre-built gaming computers is the "what am I really paying for" part. You're not just paying for raw horsepower, you're paying for the entire ecosystem that lets you plug in a monitor, fire up a game, and not waste an hour troubleshooting drivers. The KOTIN rig hits a sweet spot on paper: a Ryzen 7 7800X3D with that 3DV cache, an RTX 5060 Ti, 16GB of DDR56,000 memory, and a 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD. Those specs sound like a dream for anyone who wants to hit 1080p or even 1440p high settings without lag, especially with the extra cache on the CPU that's supposed to help game workloads. But specs alone don't tell the whole story. Let's talk about the real-world setup. When you open the box, you'll find the tower already assembled, the power cable, and an 11.3-inch smart display that sits on the front of the case. That display is not just a flashy LED strip, it actually shows system temperatures, fan speeds, and can be synced with RGB lighting if you like a bit of visual flair. In my test, I hooked the PC up to a 27-inch 144Hz monitor, plugged in my headset, and the first game I launched **Cyberpunk 2077** booted in under a minute. The 7800X3D handled the game's demanding AI and physics without the dreaded stutter you sometimes see on lower-end CPUs. The RTX 5060 Ti, while not the top-tier card, delivered smooth 1080p play at ultra settings, and even managed 1440p with a slight dip in frame rates that stayed above 60 frames per second on average. One of the hidden trade-offs that many reviewers miss is the liquid cooling system. KOTIN equipped the rig with a 240mm AIO cooler that sits right above the CPU, and the smart display lets you see the coolant temperature in real time. On a hot summer day, the cooler kept the CPU around 70 C under load, which is respectable. However, the cooler's radiator is mounted against the backside of the case, which limits airflow if you keep the PC in a confined space. In a cramped bedroom setup I tried, the case temperature rose a few degrees after an hour of continuous gaming, and while the CPU stayed cool, the chassis itself felt warm to the touch. If you plan to keep the PC in a tight nook, consider adding a small external fan or ensuring adequate ventilation. Now, who should actually buy this machine? If you're a mid-range gamer who wants to jump into current titles without fiddling with BIOS tweaks, cable management, or buying separate components, this is a solid plug-and-play option. The inclusion of Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth means you won't need a separate dongle to get high-speed internet, which is a nice convenience for apartments where running Ethernet is a pain. The 1TB SSD also gives you plenty of room for a growing game library, and the DDR56,000 memory provides a future-proof edge over older DDR4 rigs. For streamers who want a reliable system that can handle both gaming and encoding simultaneously, the extra cache on the 7800X3D can be a real time-saver, especially when you're running a 1080p stream while playing. On the flip side, this is not the right choice for a few specific groups. Hardcore 4K enthusiasts will quickly hit the ceiling of what the RTX 5060 Ti can deliver. You'll find yourself lowering texture settings or resolution just to keep frame rates smooth. Also, DIY purists who love the satisfaction of building a system from the ground up will probably be put off by the fact that the case is pre-configured, limiting upgrade options for the next 2 years. The RGB lighting, while visually appealing, adds a bit of extra heat, and the case's design doesn't allow for a larger GPU without some awkward modifications. If you already own a high-end GPU and are just looking for a new CPU and chassis, you might be better off buying the components separately and assembling them yourself. Practical strengths really shine when you consider the day-to-day experience. The system boots to Windows 11 in under 10 seconds, and the pre-installed drivers for the RTX card are up to date out of the box. I tested a few indie titles like Hades and Stardew Valley and they launched instantly, while larger open-world games took a little longer but still felt snappy. The Wi-Fi 7 connection delivered stable 500 megabits per second speeds in my home network test, which means no lag when you're downloading patches or